Today I'm joined by Jeremy Fuller, owner and CEO of A Better Solutions in Home Care Tulsa, serving families across Tulsa, Bixby, Jinx, Broken Arrow, and the Tulsa metro area. With over 23 years of experience in the home care industry and a deep personal motivation behind his work, Jeremy brings a rare perspective to senior care. Today, he'll walk us through what trusted home care services really look like and how the right support helps loved ones age in place with dignity. So, first, Jeremy, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Josh?
Doing really well. So, what does aging in place mean for seniors receiving home care in Tulsa?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started a better solution in home care here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, really out of, you know, care for my own mother, right? And we had options, right? We could put my mom in a facility. She had end stage renal failure, congestive heart failure. She went from having to use a cane to having to use a walker to having to completely rely on the walker, barely stand up, and then needing to be pushed around in a wheelchair to where she couldn't even stand up on her own to get into the wheelchair. And that was kind of her progression. And so we realized, okay, she needs someone there, and it's not always going to be me. I have, full-time business company and my wife, we have kids. So at the end of the day, it was like, okay, well, what do we do? Right. And we need somebody to take care of my mother, and it can't be us during these set times of the day. We can be there at night, etc., and help her out. So from there, what we realized, okay, we don't want our mom, I don't want my mom being in a facility. I would rather her be in the comfort of, family environment, right? So she moved in with us in our home. Now, for some families, right, stay at home or age in place, the children may not live in the same state. And even if they did live in the same state, it may not be ideal for that family to have that loved one live in the children's house. And even if they did, maybe they don't have the space, right? Maybe they have the desire, but they don't have the space. So, staying in place, living, aging in place would really mean that senior is, staying in their current home, whether it's a home they own, a condo, an apartment, whatever the case may be, versus going to an assisted living or retirement village, etc. Right? And some of those places are also somewhat drab. They can change a person's mental state. So there's a lot of studies that show that it's actually better for the seniors' mental aspects to stay at home because it's an environment they're more aware of, and even more so for somebody that might be suffering with dementia or Alzheimer's. So those are some of the things about aging in place. As you get older, you don't have to necessarily leave. You can get care that comes to you, and that's really what we're talking about there.
Yeah, so Jeremy, how does home care services help prevent a loved one feeling displaced from their cherished home?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, like I was sharing earlier, some people have lived in their home for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. It just depends on how long they've been there. And they have an emotional attachment to that home, right? I think that's a given. I think everybody could just kind of, connect with that in a general sense. There's a lot of people that won't, let's say I want to buy this home and I'm going to put a big giant development. There's all these people that I'm not leaving, they even made a movie about it, Up, right? With the older gentleman, he would not sell his home, Uh, so I think at the end of the day, there is an emotional attachment, whether they had a loved one or they had children grow up there, and they just want to stay there, right? I wouldn't say there's anything negative to that. It's somewhere a place they feel safe, they enjoy staying home in the environment that they're aware of, and there could be a lot of discomfort and mental anguish moving a senior that's aging, right, to some facility. Yes, they might have more care there, right, with some nurses or RNs, but you can get those same types of services at that senior's home without selling their home, moving them to a facility. You can get the same kind of quality, if not way better, right, because that person is aging in a place that they're familiar with, and they have one-on-one care versus being in a facility where, say, you're one out of 20 people and there's one RN or there's one LPN or there's one, home care aide that's helping 20 different people. You're getting one-on-one care. So the quality of care is so much higher by staying in their own home, and the people, the seniors, are way more comfortable because they're more familiar, have emotional attachment, and they feel more comfortable there.
Definitely. Yeah. So with that active supervision, what role does that play in keeping home care clients safe at home?
Yeah, so I can't tell you how many seniors fall. And, we've, some of us have seen the commercials, help, I've fallen and I can't get up. I mean, it kind of sounds, humorous on just the very basic level. But when that happens to your loved one, it's not humorous, right? And the statistics are actually very scary. So 85% of falls happen in the bathroom, and 50% of those falls end up being fatal within a year. So think about that for a minute. 85% of people are falling in the bathroom, and then 50% of those falls are not making it through, either through, and like my sister fell on her driveway and cracked her hip, an infection got into her bone. And then that infection in the bone of her hip, she didn't even know she had a broken hip. Like, she could still move it. Yeah, it hurt. She thought she just bruised it, but infection got into the bone, and then that caused an infection to go to her heart, and she had one of her heart valves eaten away by infection, right?
Wow.
So there's all kinds of different complications, right? Let's say somebody falls and then they have surgery and there's complicated. So you really want to try to prevent falls as much as possible. That's one of the biggest things. The other thing would be nutrition. That's probably big too. But just on a very basic level, I would say, when you bring in care, they're not going to be able to prevent falls, right? But what they can do is be able to assist and clear the way for things that might be obstacles in the home. And then if the the senior or the elderly person falls, they can provide assistance quickly, so they're not by themselves and 24 hours or 3 days on the floor and they can't get up. Even if they had some of those devices that they can click and call an ambulance if they've fallen. Let me just say this, right? If your solution is, hey, I'm gonna let mom and dad wants to stay home, okay, I feel comfortable with that, but they've been kind of falling or tripping, I'm going to go get this device. That, yes, that's great, but that doesn't really solve the problem, because a lot of seniors, and their statistics on this, are not always wearing that device. They don't always put the device around their neck when they're like, it's just, they forget, right? As we know, I have got 2 kids and a wife, I start forgetting that my wife said, I told you about this appointment with the kids. Why don't you remember? And I'm not even a senior, right? I'm forgetting things. So just think about it. You have this device and you have to always remember to put it around your neck or put it on your wrist. And then you take it, it's not always there. It's a good idea, but really the better solution to prevent falls, or not prevent falls, but to assist or try to reduce falls, right? Because you're never going to prevent all the falls, but reduce the occasions, so to speak, would be to get a caregiver in there that can help them through obstacles in the house. If there's bad eyesight or just not a lot of mobility in that senior, it can create problems, even if you reduce as much as possible the obstacles in the house that might encourage falls or trips. There's still going to be issues with just mobility in general, where they're just getting up from bed and the blood rushes to their head and whatnot, and then they fall, right? That also happens. And so having a caregiver there is really the better solution. Not, no pun intended for a better solution in home care in Tulsa, but it is the better solution rather than one of those devices.
Yeah. When a family member transitions from being their own personal caregiver to bringing in a professional caregiver, how does that free up that family member's time to spend with the loved one?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would just say, from my personal experience, I can't speak for everybody, right? but you don't stop being a caregiver. All right. So even if you get an agency in there, even if you're in another state, you're still going to get calls by mom and dad. They're going to call you. They're going to talk to you. They're going to tell you what's going on. But in my case, my mom lived with me, so it was a little bit different, when the caregiver wasn't there, and it was also part of our care plan, right? So families, that's the thing. There is that you can decide if you want to, bring in care. If you reach out to us, Better Solution Home Care here in Tulsa, and you say, hey, we need 24-hour care, or we want 7 days a week care, from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Okay. So that should cover a lot of the care, right? But then, what happens at 7 to 9 p.m. or 7 to 11 p.m.? So if you create a care plan where you aren't providing the care anymore and you have indeed transitioned, that wasn't what happened with me. I had caregivers from 9 a.m. to 5, and then I personally cared for my mom, or my wife did after that. But if you've fully transitioned and the care is there in place, then what happens is there's so much stress that's removed, right? I would be in meetings in the other room, and my mom would be crying in the other room behind me. I felt so guilty. I felt like, oh my goodness, I need to, like, why is she crying? I don't know. I'd have to leave the meeting and rush into the other room. And it started to become more occasional. And it was simple things like, oh, where's my water bottle? And she couldn't see it. It was right beside her, right? And she, fumbled around for it, but she just didn't grab it or whatnot. And some of it was also she was bored. She just wanted somebody there to talk to. But at the end of the day, it bringing in care really brings you peace of mind. One, that's first of all, is that they're getting good quality care from, in our company, we train our caregivers not just to sit there in a chair and read a book. That's a no-go. No. They need to be attentive. They need to be caring. They need to be having conversations with that client, that senior or elderly person, and connecting with them, not just sitting in a chair watching them. Now, there are times where the elderly person is sleeping a lot and whatnot. So yes, they might be in a chair sometimes because they're on watch. They have to watch that person, make sure they don't get out of bed and fall. But then when that's not something, then they can be, folding laundry, doing meal prep. They can be doing dishes. They can do other things in the house if that person is asleep or something, right? So it just comes down to, one, you're going to feel more peace. Things are going to get done that you just wouldn't physically have the time to, or physically be able to, because you're not there in person, right? So it's going to free you up. It's going to give you peace of mind, and it's going to make you feel like I'm doing my job. Like for me, it made me feel like I'm doing my job as a son, right? And so that's usually what's going to happen as far as expectations.
Yeah. And Jeremy, in the Tulsa metro area, walk us through what a free Care Compass consultation typically looks like.
Yeah, great question. These are great questions. I don't know where you got these from, but they're great. So a Care Compass guide is essentially just a simple phone call where you reach out to us. You may not know, does mom and dad, qualify for certain programs? Most care really at the end of the day is, private pay, meaning you're going to pay for this from your family out of pocket, right? A lot of home care, I had that misconception even myself is, oh, the state or the government, because she's 65 and older, they're going to provide some care here or some kind of relief. No, you know, they want you to wind down all your assets and then qualify, and then there's a period of waiting. Well, while you're waiting to do all that, mom still needs care, right? So, and that's if you wind down. Sometimes that's not actually the best financial decision. It might be to just pay for private private pay for home care, and that was my decision, right? I decided to pay out of my pocket for private pay for my mother, to provide care for her. And so at the end of the day, I would just say that if you schedule that, Care Compass guide with us, we'll kind of walk you through some of those things, because you don't know what you qualify or don't qualify, and is it private pay? There's also different types of care that you can get in the home. There's basic, there's more advanced, depending on what's really needed. We're going to walk you through that because sometimes people think they need 24-hour care and they don't. Sometimes people think they only need 6 hours of care and they actually need 8. We'll walk you through. We're the experts in this and we'll help you answer any questions and be there for you.
That's good. What makes ABS Tulsa's dedicated care team different from rotating home care staff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, a lot of our team members are consistently showing up day in, day out. And there are a lot of companies will rotate caregivers, right? What we want to do is match our client with one caregiver if possible. Now, that's not always possible in the realm of home care. Why? Because we're dealing with human beings, right? Human beings need to take off. They have things they have to go do, but we aren't going to have the client not have care that day. So let's say somebody has the sniffles or whatever, right? Yeah, well, if we don't want them, to be around a client if they have the sniffles, right? We are going to send another qualified caregiver to fill the gap. So there's things like that happen that's just natural. But as out of any other company, say in Tulsa, it is our primary goal to have the same caregiver show up day in, day out. I don't know if that's an answer to your question.
Yeah, no, that was perfect. Yeah, it shows like your dedicated staff compared to a regular agency switching through new caregivers. They want to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
That's good. And now, Jeremy, give me a few examples. When should Tulsa families start thinking about home care for their loved one?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, some families are at different places in that journey. If your mom and dad have fallen and they're getting discharged from the hospital, maybe they've been assigned physical therapy, maybe they haven't been assigned physical therapy, but they're being sent back home. I would say that is a great time to really consider, hey, maybe we get somebody in there a few hours to help bathe them. Because again, that scary statistic about where the majority of falls happens in the bathroom. So maybe we get somebody in there to help bathe mom and dad, and be there and assist with that, and then do some food prep, do some house cleaning, and then there's other advanced things that caregivers can do besides those are just general basic things on the very baseline, right? There's other more advanced things that we can do, but at the end of, and when I say that is you don't want to just go hire a housekeeper. A housekeeper is not going to go, you know, help with incontinence issues. A housekeeper is not going to make sure that mom and dad are engaged mentally if they're showing early signs of dementia or trying to reduce that from even being a possibility because we're engaging with them and having conversations versus mom and dad just sitting there quiet and not engaging their brain. So there's advanced things that we do versus say, well, I'm just going to hire, a house cleaner, or I'm just going to hire, my friend down the street who doesn't really have experience, or Jimmy or my cousin, or, you know what I mean? Like there's advanced things that we do. One, we're always going to show up, right? And we're going to fill that shift. Mom and dad is not going to go without care. And then two, there's more advanced things that we're going to do than say some of the other, options that kind of exist out in the industry.
Good.
I hope
Now,
that
Jeremy,
was to your question. I didn't
no,
go off.
yeah, that was perfect. No, yeah, it's all these examples. People are in different stages, and it's really guiding those people into making a informed decision. And
Yeah. And I
who
would say
better to
that,
give you?
if your mom and dad have fallen, coming back to that, trying to prevent future falls is one of the biggest things. It could also be, we've had some clients where they've had some amputations, and some toes, whatnot. You want to, if that's happening and something's going on diet wise, you want to try to come up with better nutrition. My mom, she, she would buy a whole bag of Cheetos and a gallon of Coke, and that was her lunch. And it was like, okay, we need to do something about this, And why was she doing it? It was because it was easy for her to access, right? And it was simple. So, and it tasted good. So easy to access, tastes good. and she didn't have a lot of other energy or options there to do something better. So that's what she ended up doing, right? Um, and so bringing in somebody like a home care agency, like a Better Solution Home Care, we can come and evaluate, okay, this client has fallen. Let's create a plan to try to help reduce that or stop it entirely if we can, which you're not always going to be able to stop falls. You just can't, right? You can't think of every scenario. Or, okay, this person has, diabetes. Let's try to have healthier meals and make sure we're sticking to that, right? I would say, so if you're thinking about calling somebody, you don't know if it's the right time, is it too early? If you've thought about that, you already need to call, because it's never too early to get somebody in there and support your loved one.
Yeah, and for those families that their loved ones are eating Cheetos and Coke for every meal every day. How does a Better Solutions in Home Care help seniors who live alone maintain that proper nutrition?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one thing that we do is we look at the whole picture, right? And we look at what do they actually have in the refrigerator for food. Let's say they are coming out of the hospital. Well, we're going to be attentive. Okay, we probably need to go through their fridge and make sure there's not anything moldy in there, make sure that there's not something in there that they can't properly see, because like my mom, her eyesight started going bad, right? So she ended up buying extra food, extra vitamins and minerals. And I'm like, why do you have the same bottle of the same vitamin 4 times in your house? You have one over here on the table and then a cat. She's like, I didn't even know I had three. I thought I couldn't see it. Right. So that's that's just something. Not everybody's going to have bad eyesight, right? But she did. So we want to make sure that the food in the fridge is fresh. It's not stale. It's not going to send them back to the hospital because they ate something that was expired and is going to cause an infection, right? We have to be aware of that. Again, we're not just coming in for caregiver and sitting in a chair. I think that's maybe a common misconception is, oh, a caregiver is just going to sit there. No, there's literal strategies and strategic things that we're going to do to make your loved one have a better life at home in the environment that they're comfortable in.
Yeah, those expiration dates will creep up on you,
Yeah.
even for me.
I know one of my team members, we brought some food to the office, and I'm just like, oh, I'm sharing, and it was actually expired, and yeah, so you gotta be careful on that stuff.
Yeah, Jeremy, I think we need to get you a caregiver. Yeah. What should families look for when choosing a home care agency in Tulsa?
I think the main thing is, there's lots of great care companies out there. Okay. But one thing that sets us apart from a lot of them, again, is that we're going to have the full picture. One of the reasons why there's a misconception that people, you get a caregiver and they're just going to sit there in the chairs, because that happens, right? We train our caregivers not to do that. We actually have an app, right, where the caregiver has to check off certain things that was done with that client. And so we are going above and beyond. And then you, as the children, can see those things that was checked off from that caregiver, right? Things that was done, whether it was, let's say we had a client of ours, they had speech therapy homework that was given to them, and the family wanted our caregiver to work with that client. So we did that, and over the span of about 2 months, that patient actually recovered 40% of their speech through the speech therapy homework. Now, we're not speech therapists, but just the action of having our caregiver be strategic about doing the homework and actually getting it done, again, reinforcing positive nutrition, reducing things that can cause problems that would send them to the hospital. Those are things that a caregiver, and one thing that we are a little bit different, we're more strategic. How can we make this the best experience for this client? What are they facing right now? What are the problems? And then how are we going to provide a solution there, i.e., a better solution in home care, right? And so that's kind of what sets us apart, because I personally hired caregiving companies for my mother, and they would sit there in the chair, right? We don't do that. We're against that. Another thing, and I think why that happens, is there's a lot of home care agencies that are national franchises, and they're the owners kind of out of the picture, so to speak, and it's ran by, say, an office manager or something. That's when that company is just so big. Like, I grew up in Tulsa. I've been here for 20 years, 20 plus years, since I was 8 years old. I'm 40 today. So what is that? 30, how many years is that? 34 something years, 32 years, 32 years in Tulsa, right? And so at the end of the day, a lot of these companies are not necessarily owned by even people that live in Tulsa, right? And so there's not a lot of care. I'm not going to name names, but there's not a lot of care that goes into the type of quality that the home care agency is providing for that loved one. It's just another patient. It's just another client that they're trying to get. We're more strategic. We're trying to look at the whole picture, spiritual, their nutrition, their health, their well-being, their engagement with their brain. We're looking at the whole picture.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Very extensive. Now, Jeremy, what misconceptions do Tulsa and Northeast Oklahoma families often have about home care?
I would say that sometimes that we've kind of already touched on this a little bit. Oh, it's just a babysitter, right? I can't sit here in a chair because maybe that's what you're aware of, that you're just being there. Maybe even the loved one said, "Hey, I just want you to be here." Yes, there's that, but there's all these other strategic things that we can do where we can take action versus just sitting in a chair. So I think that is alone is one of them. Um, Another thing is that, Medicaid or the government is going to pay for this, and that you won't have to pay a penny out of pocket. And so that's a common misconception, is I won't have to pay for this. The government should, and I was at that place, right? I was actually upset. I'm like, I have to pay? What am I paying, for out of my taxes? I was actually upset. My mom paid taxes on her checks, right? Why aren't they taking care of her? And the reality is, again, is if your loved one has assets for the government to pay, and you have to go through like Medicaid program for this. Now, if you're a veteran with the VA, it's different. You just get those benefits for home care. It's called aid in attendance. But a common misconception is that the government's going to pay for it, right? And that's just not the case with everybody. Again, if you have assets, they make you wind down those assets to a certain amount, and then you'll get a certain amount of hours if you qualify for that. And again, that takes time. You're talking, it's not going to happen in 2 weeks. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's good, Jeremy. So, tell the people where they can find you, how they can get you, get in contact with you, how they can get a Care Compass consultation.
Yeah, that's great. So you can Google "a better solution in home care Tulsa," um, or you can go to our website, and I'll get that for everybody here. I just want to make sure I got the right URL. It is abshomecaretulsa.com. So abshomecaretulsa.com. That's our website. You can go there and you can schedule a home care compass guide phone call, absolutely free, where we guide you through your different care options. And so that's probably the best way. If you don't want to type it in on Google, abshomecaretulsa.com, you could just Google "a better solution in home care Tulsa," and you should find us. We're right there. We pop right up.
All right. Well, Jeremy Fuller, owner and CEO of A Better Solutions in Home Care Tulsa. Jeremy, thank you, and thank you for your expertise and doing a service for these loved ones. Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate you.